welcome to Q&A with S&A. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Shane.
And today we are really lucky, not really because he's just come down from his office into our podcast studio, but to have in the studio with us Joseph Colaciello, who is, I'll let Shane introduce him because he's got all the words.
So Joseph is a senior manager at Aintree Group, just recently appointed, in fact, last week.
Yeah.
So Joseph has been with us for 9 years, roughly.
Almost.
Yes. And started not as an accountant here.
No.
And actually we'll delve into how that actually came about, but has evolved over those 9 years and now is a senior manager. And so welcome.
Thank you.
So just on that, so let's share how it came about that you joined Aintree Group. So what happened to instigate that?
Yeah, so it was about 8 or 9 years ago now. I was in my third year of uni and my parents were clients of Aintree Group and I was studying commerce and I wanted to get my foot in the door somewhere and get a bit of real life experience. So Dad was like, why not come have an interview with the guys at Aintree Group? So that's how it all started, and I started working at Aintree Group in the admin team for a couple of days a week, which was a good experience. Good opportunity to build my network and kind of get my foot in the door and experience what the office life was really like, because I guess at uni it's quite a bit different. You go to class and you go home and you don't get to experience what it's like in the office. So yeah, it was a good experience and got to see the business in a bit of a different perspective as I do now and appreciate what the admin team do.
And also, when you started here, it was in our Q office.
It was.
Yeah, so that was 3 offices ago. Is that how you do it?
One.
Yeah, so
anyway. I
This is my third office.
Yeah,
Third
third office.
Q to Camberwell to Hawthorne East.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different then too.
Slightly different,
Yes.
So we had a much smaller team. I think it would have been 15 people.
Yeah, I don't even think it
Roughly.
was that many, but maybe
Towards the end it might have
full-time
been.
equivalents.
Yeah,
so.
it might have been, yeah.
Yeah. So come a long way since then.
It was, wasn't it? Because at that point as well, we used to answer actual telephones. We've got a photo of you answering a phone across the desk at the Q office, because sometimes, as phones do, it's really hard to learn how to transfer people from one call to another. So I think the office was so small back then that you could literally just pick up somebody else's desk phone. And we've got a photo of Joseph with the phone, the wiry cord of the phone hanging over the other side of the desk, which is like, not that Joseph is an old man by any stretch, but I bet you it makes you feel a little old when I talk to you about those sorts of things like that.
Feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
He looked a bit younger then too, I must say.
Yeah,
The long hair going.
the long
that's
hair.
correct, yes, that's right, yeah.
When you started with us, Joseph, you're a young man. And now you're still a young man, but life has, evolved and things have moved on. And when you started, because doing a commerce degree doesn't necessarily lead to accounting either. A lot of people who do commerce degrees don't become accountants. They go into other things. Did you want to become an accountant, or was it more that, Dad said, go and get a job, or, how did that all work out?
I've always had a bit of like a love for numbers and business and stuff like that. It's always interested me. I guess Dad having his own business, and I think it was year 11 when I had to pick like my subjects at school. I picked like all the business subjects, like the legal studies, business management, accounting, and then like I did well in those subjects as opposed to like English and those sorts of subjects. I liked maths as well. So then when I went to uni, I was like, I'll keep it broad. Like I like business subjects, so I did a commerce degree and did all my core units, and then from there I think my 2 favourites were accounting and finance. So I liked those 2 the most, and then once I got the job at Aintree Group, I guess I kind of fell into it a little bit as well, and that kind of helped me make my decision. This is what
You
I
studied
wanted.
at Deakin? Was it Deakin?
Yeah, it
that's
was.
right. Okay,
Yeah.
And one thing I forgot to mention too at the start was that you're also a shareholder of Aintree Group too. So that happened a couple of years ago. So our youngest shareholder.
Beginning of last year? Beginning of 24?
Yeah, that's right.
I think it'll be 2 years at 30 June.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Yeah.
Yep.
It goes quick.
Yeah.
It does. It's so just going back to that, when you came in and you were not doing accounting work, you were you were in the admin team, and back then it was still an admin team. We called it admin. We don't call it that anymore because times change, and you realise that people do roles differently. How does that impact on how you ask our current operations team to do things? Does it make you more aware of what you used to be asked to do, or
I think it does a little bit. I feel like I have a bit more of an appreciation for the work that they did, because I remember when I first started calling clients, and I was nervous to get on the phone to call clients. So I can understand like the new team members that start out, and I can appreciate what they go through at the start and calling the ATO and how much of a hassle that can be from time to time.
Yeah.
And do you think having that experience in the admin team was helpful in terms of your role as an accountant going forward?
I think so. I think you see the business in a different light. Like you really understand what they do. I think it's important to understand what each and every sector or department of the business actually does.
Yeah.
So then you appreciate and you understand a bit more about the business and how it all works and how your role is, like how their role affects you and how your role affects them. And
So as Shane alluded to, you're now a shareholder. How has that impacted on, number one, the team, you think the team dynamic? Because obviously when you become an owner of a business or a shareholder, the team, you're all of a sudden not necessarily one of the team anymore, because you know stuff that other people don't know. How has it impacted, do you think, your relationships with the people around you, and what were the main changes in that?
I think you have to juggle that a little bit. Your friendships outside of the shareholding team and those other team members. But I still think I have a great relationship with my team members, regardless of the fact that I'm now a shareholder. I don't think it's impacted it heavily. Just got to be mindful of certain things from time to time. But in terms of my role as well, I think it stayed very similar, even though the fact that I'm a shareholder, I just have a different mindset in respect to certain things, which has been good as well, because I think it helps with my business advisory work as well. Seeing how our business operates helps me give advice to other businesses, because I can put my self in their shoes a bit easier. So I think it's been really good experience.
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that is really important for particularly young business advisors coming through and we've talked about it a lot, aside from the fact that you're a shareholder, but just more generally with the team, that it's really important to think about things as a business owner and understand what our clients actually are feeling and going through every day in their day-to-day and the decisions they have to make and all of that sort of stuff. How much do you think that your parents owning a business, how much of that do you think is part of your awareness? Like, did you grow up knowing that they had big decisions to make, or was there was it a stressful way? I know, when Shane and I would talk to our kids, because they were both really young when we started Aintree Group, they really they grew up with it as like a sibling kind of. For you, how did that evolve in your family, Joseph?
Yeah, it was a little bit like that. So my dad had a construction business. So I guess early on I was just more keen in because I was young, I was like construction, I was like cool to go out
diggers
there.
And stuff and
when I was
tools and...
when I was very young. But I guess as I got a bit older, I was more interested in the business side of things. And I actually did some work experience there while I was at uni. So in the uni holidays, I'd go and work with Dad on the tools, which I didn't really enjoy that much for 3 months. And that was a good experience, because I guess it made me realise that I want to work in an office more than anything. And also during that period, I would help out with the bookkeeping. So I think for a couple of years, I took over the bookkeeping, and that was getting a bit more of a deeper understanding into the business and how it all works, and payroll and super and contractors and all the different types of the business. So I guess my interest grew as I got older.
And did Dad want you to take over the business in some form? Was that ever discussed between you and him?
It wasn't. I think they were pushing me to go to uni.
Right.
Because I think Dad wanted me, my parents both wanted me to go to uni.
So there was no pressure for you to...
I think it was a bit more the opposite. Because, my parents knew how hard it is on the body and how much labour intensive
Yeah.
the job is, and they were like, go get an office job.
Yeah.
You'll be better off.
Yeah.
Hence they sent you to us.
Exactly. No, I wasn't pushed at all.
You probably don't develop your muscles and stuff as well
Yeah.
in an office. So
I don't
pushing a
know.
pen.
I reckon,
Yeah,
we've got to be a competition, bit of a
Yeah,
competition
okay,
here
fair
between
enough.
everyone. I think we'll talk about Joseph's tennis
Yeah.
skills soon in the conversation. But I think the fact that you've grown up around business and understood the stress and, the stuff that your parents would have had to have talked about at the dinner table and stuff is probably a bit different to if, Dad had gone out and worked in an office himself or something. You get a bit of an understanding about how it all works, and that it's really important, even if you don't grow up in a family where those things are obvious to you, that you've got to always put the business owner hat on and think about it. So when Kane comes to you and asks you if we can buy a bazillion-dollar camera for the podcast, and you're just looking at it instantly going, there's no way we're going to be doing that. I think it just adds an element to it, doesn't it? That
Agree.
you think about the expenses, because now that you're a shareholder, and not that this is really any different, because the financial sort of situation at Aintree Group has always been pretty open and transparent, but you get to see all the things that we spend money on and stuff like that. So you get to see how much the amenities cost and all of that. And when we move into an office, and you get to understand the expenses behind it, and it's sometimes it's really big numbers, isn't it? And it's different when it's your thinking of it as like,
Exactly.
oh, that's my investment too. So changes perspective. What do you think has been the biggest challenge going from, answering the phones and calling the ATO to now, the biggest challenge that you've faced in your career so far? And it's a tiny, like we're talking about a really small period of time, but.
So I think early on in my career, one of the challenges was juggling doing my CA, juggling a full-time job for the first time, which is a bit difficult at the start, working 5 days a week, and then a social life on top of that. I feel like those three are kind of the three that I had to manage early on for probably the first 3 years, I think the CA course went for. So that was I guess it was challenging, but it was manageable. And I got a bit lucky at the end of my CA because it was during COVID. So I was so the social life was pretty much non-existing at that point. So I could focus a lot more of my time on my CA studies. And now probably the challenges are more around like managing people, managing a client base, around those sorts of things, which is different challenges, but are great challenges as well. And I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Managing people, you mentioned that, and how the team, as you've grown into the role and how things have changed for you. The team, I think, we've got a pretty good team here, and they're all really supportive. Like, we announced that you've got a promotion, and everyone's really excited about it and all of that sort of stuff. But what is the biggest challenge for you with regard to managing people?
I think one of the challenges is change, and how receptive they are to change. I know in the last little while we've had quite a bit of change, so that's been one of the challenges of managing people and making sure that they're on board with the change. And I think the method that I used was leading from example. I guess if they see that if they understand why we're doing the change and the benefits involved with it, then they're more likely to be on board if they can see their leaders doing that. So I think that's been one of the challenges recently.
Yeah. What's your favourite part about managing people?
I think seeing them grow, watching them develop. I think a lot of them can resonate with me as well, given I was in their shoes not that long ago. So seeing someone progress like I have recently is quite satisfying. And also just seeing them like go through their CA modules, or even something as simple as when it clicks that they understand how a GST recs and just the small wins.
It's sometimes not those big ticket items, is it?
It
It's
is.
just they just get something. It's been because some of these things are complicated, and when you finally click with it, it's such a milestone and makes it easier going forward. And
I remember when I started out, I used to struggle with the GST recs as well. And then when you finally get it, like, there's no looking back.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate when someone understands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always the little small joys in a day that make things more rewarding. If you were to have your time again, would you do the same things? Like, would you go to uni and do a commerce degree? Have you ever sat down and said, and part of this comes from the fact that, like, we've just had Dan, who's been with us for the same amount of time as you, really, make a decision that he wants to take a big leap into. I'm not asking you to resign or anything on it.
I was going to say, we don't want him to change his mind.
We definitely don't want to. But if you were to do it all again, would you do the same things again, like go to uni and do the same course and stuff? Or, has something come along where you've gone, oh, that would have been really cool to do?
I don't think so. I think this was the right path for me.
Yeah.
Not like I've second guessed it at times throughout the journey, but
of course.
Yeah.
But
No, of course, he says, when he knew that he was going to be an accountant from like the day that he set foot in.
No, I think. Sorry, I'm digressing now. My careers advisor at high school said I should be an actuary.
Oh.
Yes, and I didn't even know what that was, and so I looked it up and then thought, no, I don't want to do that.
Do you know what an actuary is?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I thought that seemed a bit. Yeah,
boring.
I'm careful in case there's any actuaries
I know.
out there. It's
apologies to the actuaries in the
room. They have a
room.
need. They have a place.
Of course,
and
they really do.
We actually use them.
But I think actuaries have a really deep, they really love numbers, like numbers and process and, order and ticks and stuff.
Yeah.
I think you would have needed to complete the highest maths.
Yeah. Which Shane was never motivated enough to do anything like that.
So anyway. But not a professional tennis player?
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What were you in a previous life, Joseph, before you decided that where could life have taken you?
So when I finished year 7 and then went overseas for 3 years from year 8, 9 and 10 to have a crack at being a tennis player.
Yeah.
So I got homeschooled for those 3 years.
Yep.
I think it was distance education Victoria.
Yeah.
Mum was a big help during those times and had some what are you called mentors while I was overseas and used to help me with my studies and stuff like that. But I guess the study was kind of on the back foot for those 3 years and the focus was on the tennis.
So that was in Florida. Were you in Florida?
Yeah, I was in Florida for the first 18 months and then in Barcelona for I think 14 months after that. Mm-hmm. So about 3 years all up, just under.
Yeah.
Which was a great experience. Like got to experience a whole different world essentially.
Yeah.
And how the tennis world is, which is kind of funny because the Australian Open has just finished.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a whole different life. Training like all day, every day essentially. And I guess one of the things I missed the most was probably the friendships back home. Yeah. Because when you're playing tennis in an academy all the time, you're essentially competing against your friends. Yeah. So it's a different like friendship. And then we came home after the end of the 3 years just for like a holiday. And at that point I decided like I've had enough and I wanted, because I caught up with all my mates and we hadn't been back during that whole 3 years.
Wow.
And yeah, at that point I realised I wanted to stay home and like I think I missed all my friends and they were going into year 11 and going to parties and playing footy together and having fun. So I think that was
it's pretty intense.
That was the moment. Yeah.
It's an intense thing to do, isn't it? Go overseas and like leave everything behind to try and, see if you can make it in I can't even imagine.
So were you about 15 or 16 when you came back? 16?
Yeah, so I would have been 15 turning 16. Okay. So nearly 16. Yeah. So I think I was about 13, 14, 15 for the years I was away.
Okay.
So, but a great experience.
Yeah. So mum went over with you, just mum or
Dad came
both?
over as well. So they had a bit of a break from work. Actually, Dad did some work while we're in America. And we still keep in contact with a lot of like his boss. I'm friends with his kids because I play tennis with them and we're going to America this year and catching up with them. Yeah. So there's a lot of like lifelong friendships and relationships from the time we spent overseas. So,
awesome experience.
Yeah, definitely.
Would you recommend people do those sorts of things?
Definitely, yeah. It's a good experience.
And how was distance ed for you? Like that's probably a big question for people who are thinking about that sort of stuff. Like how do you do that as a like 13, 14, 15-year-old.
Yeah, I feel like I probably didn't devote enough time to my studies in those years while I was focusing on tennis.
But it seemed to work out okay. So.
But yeah, I got through
Yeah.
all the required work. It probably isn't as full on, like the distance ed program is pretty basic. Like they obviously understand that the people, they need to cater for people that don't have a full day to study. So yeah, just ticking off the assignments and getting through all the relevant work.
Yeah.
It's pretty much just getting through the basics, really.
Yeah. And no thought when you did that to just do your education years over in the US? Like, was there a deliberate decision to do it as distance ed here, or you don't?
I don't
probably
recall.
have to talk to Mum about that.
Mum
Maybe I'll
would
get
know.
her on the podcast
I'm
and
not
see.
sure. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure how that all worked, but
Yeah.
I guess I'm not sure if that would have impacted coming back and doing
Yeah.
year 11 and 12 back home. So, but yeah, it was kind of interesting when I got back. I was on the back foot a little bit with my level of education, but it was like I feel like I didn't miss too much.
Yeah.
The only impact it really had was I couldn't do a year 12 subject when I got back, and I couldn't do because I wanted to do methods, but they wouldn't let me because I had to do further first, and I wasn't coming off too much education. So yeah,
Fortunately, calculators and Excel
Exactly.
spreadsheets exist. So
apart from that, it didn't really I just slotted straight back in.
Yeah,
It was as
yeah.
if I never left really.
yeah. And your friends, did they rib you about it, or did you get any slack from them about, being an international tennis star or anything like that?
Nah, not really. I think they were pretty good about
Yeah.
it. I slotted straight back into my old friendship group.
Yeah, and they're still all friends now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, obviously.
Did they have junior rankings at the time? Did you have a ranking at all?
Yeah, so basically under 18s is just from when you're 12 to 18. There's only really one ranking system. So I was when I finished up, I might have been 500-ish in the under 18s at 15. So that was that was where I was at. I played the last tournament I played in was the Australian Open qualifiers for the juniors.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
at when I was 15.
So if
was
people Google you, they'll find you.
Yeah,
pictures of you.
something will come up.
Did you win
Everyone
a
is
set, or
listening.
did you win a game, or did you win a set or anything?
I think I lost in 3 sets in the first round.
Right,
of
okay.
qualies.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
Yeah.
But playing against 17, 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
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 Exactly.
Yeah.
The player that I played against that's the best player I've played is Zverev. So
Oh, right.
I
okay.
played against him when
Wow.
I think I was 14. It was in Dubai.
Okay.
We played each other.
Right.
He gave me an absolute touch-up, so we won't talk about that. But he's the best player I've played against. And after he beat me, I was like, this guy's unreal. Like,
Yeah.
you could just
Yeah.
tell that he was
Yeah.
going to be really
Well,
good.
he
Yeah.
did exceptionally well at the Australian Open, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How has the discipline of that impacted on your life now? Like, do you still think about those things? Do you still have that sort of mentality when you engage in something new? Do you go in with that sort of determination and focus?
Yeah, I think it's probably taught me a lot about work ethics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because everyone out there is kind of working very hard, and a lot of it, there is some talent that comes down to a bit of talent as well, but the majority is how many hours you put in, and you've got to be willing to sacrifice and give up your life essentially, to devote it to the sport. So it resonates a bit back to work.
Yeah.
And
What sports do you play now? Now we'll talk about this on the basis that obviously there was an sports injury, but how do you reconcile being a professional sports person, really, even at a very young age, to then saying, okay, now I just play for the fun of it? What do you do? How do you go from that from one to the other? Because there's a bit of a mentality change,
Yeah, no. So I'm a very competitive person. So I couldn't give up sport altogether.
Yep.
So I played AFL
Yeah.
footy when I got back, which was a bit of a different, coming from an individual sport to a team sport. But I loved it. And I played that from when before we left, I played footy as well.
Yep.
So it was footy and tennis all the way up until I was 12, 13, and then had to make a decision on what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Came back, played footy, and up until I was 25 or 26, up till a few years ago.
Yeah. Up until the injuries time.
injuries.
Yeah.
And then now I'm playing a bit of golf. So
Yeah.
It's dropped down from tennis to footy to golf. I don't know what I can go to next. Probably playing lawn bowls.
Lawn bowls,
years.
yeah. Hey,
Not that there's anything wrong with lawn bowls.
But they take them young now for lawn
Really?
bowls.
Yeah, definitely. It's a little
behind the eight ball.
little less stress on the knees to play lawn bowls.
so
I think that's
Sit
a
down and
No, I think Joseph's is more you can't
side-
go side to
sideways
side
with an
so-
ACL. Yep.
How did that impact on you? How did the injury impact on your I'm not saying that I am anywhere near being an elite sports person, but doing a significant knee injury like that does have a bit of an impact on your body, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
What is it?
It's kind of more frustrating
Yeah.
than anything, just not being able to do what you used to be able to do.
Yeah.
And I go into the gym and just having to do like knee exercises and leg extensions to strengthen your quad.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
just get bored of it over the time.
Yeah.
And what is your golf handicap?
I think I'm sitting at about 16 at the moment, so I need to bring that down considerably.
You need some golf
I've got a bit more
days.
time up my sleeve now that I don't have to go to the gym and do knee rehab all the time. So I have to start playing again soon.
Yeah. You are you've got family life outside of work, and we have a really strong mentality towards like making sure that the team has time to do the things that they want to do. When you make decisions about how you want to go forward with your life, when you're thinking about all those sorts of things, how do you reconcile that with, I want to achieve all these things as an accountant, as a business owner and stuff, and when you start thinking about, I want to travel and I want to do all these things, like obviously we go back to the conversation about Dan. He wants to do those things and he's decided that he's just going to give up the job and push himself to do those things. But not that you have to do that. What goes on in your mind when you start thinking about, I want to achieve, these 10 things and I've got this amount of time to do it in? How am I going to work it all out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you need to prioritise what you want to achieve and just pick the three that, maybe two or three that are achievable.
Yeah.
And focus on that. Like for me personally, over the last couple of years, I've always wanted to like get into the property market and buy a house. So that was kind of the main focus over the last.
So you've achieved that.
And this year we're travelling in the middle of the year, so that's something exciting and that we're looking forward to.
Yeah.
Just kind of having a couple little things to look forward to, or side goals on the side of work.
Yeah.
It's always needed, I think.
Yeah. How do you switch off?
It's a good question. I feel like it's hard to switch off until you get away, or kind of, I think getting on a plane helps you switch off.
Yeah.
But if I'm not doing that, I think going for a swim, like going to the beach or going to the pool, playing golf.
Yep.
Yeah, that takes your mind off work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough, isn't it? It's not you can't just let it all go. And I think, probably helpful for you that you've got a partner who probably doesn't switch off much either. Like completely different roles, different jobs, but still the same, intensity, still the same, it's really personal, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I think we both take work home sometimes, but I even just get into the gym.
We never do. We never take work
Wouldn't
home.
have thought so.
No, ever. No.
Yes, yeah. So travel plans, obviously US this year, what you said.
So, US this year. So July for 3 weeks. So, we're looking forward to
catch up with old friends.
Yeah, catch up with some old friends. So one of my closer mates from back in the tennis days is now working in New York. So we'll spend 4 days with him and then go to Michigan with his family. They've got a house by the lake there, and spend 4th of July with them.
Yeah.
And then we'll kind of go on our own for the next couple of weeks. We're still kind of mapping out what we want to do. We've had, so we're tossing with between a few places to finish with. I think the last one we tossed up was flying into San Fran and then doing a road trip down to LA and flying back out from there.
Yeah.
As opposed to San Diego. So we're just weighing out those two at the moment. But we need to really get onto it and start booking some accommodation.
Yeah.
Book the flights and accommodation in New York. The rest is a bit up in the air.
Yeah. It's a big country, so it's hard, isn't it? And you've obviously, like, we've given you places to go and see. No doubt Selena has probably been in your ear and told you a million places as well. So whatever, I guess, wherever the trip ends up taking you, it's not like it'll be the last time that you can ever go there.
Exactly.
So the good thing about it is that you've got plenty of time to be able to do those sorts of things. I'm just looking through the questions that Ali has put together for us because, we had a laugh about this before we started and said that we never use the questions that Ali asks. We only use them as inspiration. But I am going to ask you the question that she's got here, and Shane's supposed to ask it, but I'm going to ask it. Goals for the next 5 years, Joseph, personally and professionally. Really, really heavy one to finish up the questioning.
Well, there's a lot that can be achieved in 5 years, I think.
Yeah,
So if I go
it's a
back
long
5 years
time.
ago
Yeah,
and
yeah.
think back.
You're still a baby,
Yeah.
you know.
So, 5 years. I think personally, so I just touched on we bought a house recently. So we're currently renting it out, so we're not living in it yet. So I think one of the main personal goals is to do a bit of renovating because it needs a little bit of work.
Yeah.
And get settled into
Lucky
that.
the construction industry is in your veins.
It does
so
help. Let's handball a lot of that to Dad.
hopefully he isn't listening. And
And Estelle's dad is an electrician. So
perfect.
Bonus.
Yeah.
I'll be the project manager.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, just point
Bringing
them.
people
do
drinks.
That, do that. Yeah.
So that'll be a bit exciting, like new chapter,
Yeah.
moving into a new place.
Yeah.
Professionally, I think the end goal, I guess, is to become a partner one day. So I guess strive towards that in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to say this as well, the journey that you've taken to get to where you are right now, is there any advice that you would give? So, you know, the team will probably listen to this podcast because they'll be really interested in the answers to the questions that Joseph's giving because, like we said before we went on air, you know, Joseph doesn't talk much. So he's not always forthcoming with information about himself, and he's probably that's probably why he wasn't going to last on the tennis circuit because he's a little bit humble and a little bit quiet and probably not like most, you know, famous tennis players. They're pretty loud and full of themselves. If you were to give the team and anybody else listening advice about what you need to do to not necessarily become a partner in an accounting firm, because that's not what everyone wants to do, but I guess that's what the team here might be thinking. Like, what would Joseph, if it was your choice for them to move from one goal to another, which it is, you know, in a lot of senses, what would you say to them you needed to see from them to succeed and to, you know, get to the position you're in?
I think like you need to not be afraid. You need to back yourself in. I think that's something that like I could have even been better at myself is like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. Like even just like when you're younger and you want a partner, or even now, a partner to proofread an email.
Yep.
Sometimes you just need to back yourself in, trust your gut and just send it.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, what's the worst that can happen? And you learn the most from your mistakes.
Yeah.
So I think you need to trust your instincts
and
have a bit of faith in yourself.
Yep.
And that can go a long way.
Yeah. It's hard to give that to the next person down though, isn't it? You probably know how hard it is because you find it hard as well to just trust your gut and it's hard. And how do you help your team be able to take those risks? Like how do you treat them to give them the to empower them to make those?
Yeah, I think you have to comfort them as well and let them understand that what the consequences are. And if they know that at the end of the day, like it's not going to be the be all or end all, that they'll be more comfortable and more confident in themselves. So I think, you need to really just instill confidence in them. And if they have the right mentality and the right knowledge behind them, there won't be any issues.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I think it's a good one, and it's a very important one in general that I think at all levels to back yourself. And if you're not sure, that's okay to ask, but to not always ask every time. And it's okay to fail. I think it's a key thing that people don't understand is it is okay to fail, and people are forgiving. And you can always go back and retract or say, oh, apologies, I got that wrong. And people respect you for being honest and open and transparent. So,
Yeah. On that note, thank you. Really appreciate it. I'm sure that the team are going to really appreciate hearing some of those stories as well. Maybe you have told them, if you've gone out for a few drinks with them and you've let some of that info out to them. But I think that most of the team, at least the team at Aintree Group, would be really appreciative of the fact that you've answered these questions with the candor that you have today. Because, Joseph is probably one of the quiet achievers at Aintree Group. You don't necessarily know where his mind is thinking. And I think it's really important that our clients and the team get to know where we're all coming from better. So thank you for joining us today, Joseph. We'll probably do a series of these. I know we've spoken to Trung, we'll speak to Nadia. There'll be some opportunities for everyone. And then, we might do a group podcast, which means that Kane will get to buy some new equipment because we can't do everyone at once. So he'll probably be pleased about that too. But thank you for coming in today. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into Q&A with S&A this time. And looking forward to seeing you again next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.